June 10th, 2025. An afternoon that was supposed to be filled with pride at the prestigious Hill House School in London suddenly turned into an unprecedented royal media disaster. Amid the applause for outstanding students ascending the stage at the school's annual awards ceremony, a moment unfolded that left the entire auditorium in stunned silence. Princess Charlotte, daughter of Prince William and Princess Catherine, was smiling as she walked onto the stage to receive her achievement certificate, when suddenly the presenting teacher, Ms. Reynolds, tore the document apart in front of hundreds of spectators, including royal representatives, journalists, and countless cameras broadcasting the event live. A ripping sound echoed through the hall, sharper than thunder in a clear sky. Ms. Reynolds declared coldly, "This award does not belong to her. There has been a serious mistake." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The silence stretched longer than any speech. Parents exchanged bewildered glances. Reporters frantically checked their camera feeds. While in the front row, Prince William leaned back in his chair, face frozen like stone, speechless. Beside him, Queen Camilla tilted her head and whispered something to her assistant, her expression a mix of curiosity and cool detachment. Only Charlotte, just 10 years old, stood perfectly still, wide-eyed but without a single tear, her back straight, hands clutching the hem of her pristine white dress as if trying to contain a storm within. No one could have predicted that a school awards ceremony would erupt into a national shockwave. A clip taken from the live television broadcast rapidly went viral across social media. From TikTok and Instagram to the evening news on BBC and Sky News, the image of Ms. Reynolds ripping up the princess's certificate on stage became a symbol of collapsing old norms, and at the same time sparked a flood of controversial questions. What could have driven an experienced teacher at a school renowned for educating the UK's elite to act with such audacity? Was it truly an administrative error or a deliberate challenge aimed at the royal family? Was there perhaps a deeper hidden fracture between traditional educators and the media's portrayal of a perfect princess? Some parents present at the ceremony shared their reactions soon after, saying they felt deeply confused and outraged by Ms. Reynolds' actions. "No one, not even an ordinary child, deserves to be humiliated like that, let alone a girl growing up under the scrutiny of an entire nation," said one mother whose child is in Charlotte's class. Another added, "What shocked me most wasn't the certificate being torn, but Princess Charlotte's response. She didn't cry, she didn't run off stage. She stood there with an eerie calm. That's not the reaction of a typical child. That's the composure forged under pressure and power." Meanwhile, the royal family has not released any official statement. However, insiders revealed that just hours after the event, Kensington Palace held an emergency private meeting attended by Prince William, Princess Catherine via video call, and senior advisors. The biggest question on the table: should this incident be handled quietly or used as a catalyst to open broader discussions on education, social equity, and how children of royal lineage are treated? Significantly, Hill House School immediately locked all of its social media accounts and disabled the comment section on its official website. Ms. Reynolds reportedly left the school later that evening. Whether voluntarily or by request remains unclear. The media began hunting her down as a modern-day villain, though others came to her defense, suggesting maybe she was trying to speak a truth everyone else was too afraid to. And the public? They are divided. One side harshly condemns the inhumane treatment and child humiliation, insisting that teachers should be fired immediately. The other side calls for an investigation into how Charlotte was awarded the honor in the first place, questioning potential invisible privileges in elite private education, where the children of the powerful may enjoy unfair advantages. Once again, Princess Charlotte, not yet 11, has become the eye of a societal storm, much like her mother, Princess Diana, once was in the unforgiving glare of the media more than 3 decades ago. But one thing is undeniable: the image of Charlotte standing silently in the midst of chaos, neither collapsing nor crying, but holding her head high, left Britain in shock and awe. In an age where emotions are relentlessly exploited on social media, that calm carried a silent power, forcing even the harshest skeptics to admit This little girl is growing up not just as a princess, but as a symbol of a new kind of resilience. So what did you feel when you witnessed this moment? Was it truly a mistake or a calculated move? Do you believe Princess Charlotte truly deserved the award? Or is there something hidden behind the glittering curtain of royalty? Leave a comment with your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to follow the unfolding twists behind this story. Because this is not just a school incident. This is the first sign that the old standards are beginning to fall, and that alone may shake an entire monarchy. The entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath after the scornful sound of Ms. Reynolds tearing the certificate. No one dared to speak. No one knew how to react. But the biggest surprise didn't come from the outraged parents or the stunned teachers. It came from the very child who had just been publicly humiliated. Princess Charlotte. She didn't cry. She didn't reach for her mother. Nor did she scan the room for sympathy. Instead, in a moment that made the adults feel ashamed, Charlotte quietly bent down and picked up each torn piece of the certificate. Without saying a word, she folded them carefully, gently, as if touching something sacred. Then she slipped the fragments into the pocket of her school blazer, neatly, precisely, as if the paper still held its full value. Charlotte's eyes at that moment, no tears, no sign of pain, only a steady, deep, and calm gaze directed at Ms. Reynolds. It wasn't defiance, it wasn't blame. It was the look of someone who knows exactly where she stands and chooses to rise above the insult with dignity. In that very moment, the auditorium fell into a suffocating silence. Not out of fear, but because everyone realized this was no longer just a child. This was a princess shining without needing a crown. The cameras kept rolling. Some parents began whispering. Others stood up, ready to storm the stage. But it was Charlotte's utter composure that stopped them. She didn't need protection. Her silence was louder than any defense. It was not passive and certainly not acceptance. It was a declaration that she would not let anyone define her worth by a torn piece of paper. Throughout the remainder of the ceremony, Charlotte did not leave her seat. She sat with perfect posture, hands on her ham, eyes fixed on the stage as if nothing had happened. But everyone knew, the entire room knew, that the most memorable part of the event wasn't the speeches, nor the awards, but the moment a 10-year-old girl taught adults a lesson in grace and dignity. What then gave Charlotte the strength to remain so astonishingly calm? Was it the result of a strict royal upbringing? Or perhaps a legacy passed down from her late grandmother, Princess Diana, who once faced an entire institution of power with the same serene smile? Whatever the reason, one thing is certain. Charlotte proved that age does not determine character, and sometimes silence is the strongest form of resistance. That moment spread like wildfire across social media. Clips capturing Charlotte's steady gaze, her act of gathering the torn certificate and folding it carefully, became symbols of silent strength. Millions of users shared, discussed, and expressed admiration. The little girl was hailed as the icon of a new generation's dignity. Many parents wrote, "I learned from a child how to remain calm in the face of humiliation." The incident at that ceremony was not just a personal mishap. It was a stern warning to those who think they can use power to shame others. Ms. Reynolds may have believed she was teaching Charlotte a lesson, but in the end, it was she who was exposed. Her pettiness reflected back through the nobility of a child. Indeed, after all the skeptical glances and venomous whispers at the Windsor Castle reception, Charlotte still maintained an astonishing composure and presence. While many continued to gossip about why she showed no sign of hurt or anger in the face of Queen Camilla's deliberate act of exclusion, a secret from the academic world was quietly revealed, one that stunned both the royal family and the public. Just days before that lavish event, Charlotte had silently participated in a massive national mathematics competition and won it outright. What's more remarkable is that Charlotte did not use her real name. She entered without a title, without any mention of her lineage, and without a single letter of royal endorsement. Instead, the name Amamira C. Wales quietly appeared among the list of candidates, just another ordinary student among more than 12,000 participants from across the United Kingdom. No one realized that behind that poetic name was the young Princess of England, and no one could have guessed that only days later, she would become the center of an interroyal controversy steeped in jealousy, exclusion, and injustice. The competition, titled Mathematical Excellence, was hosted by the National Academic Alliance and is known as one of the most rigorous and prestigious intellectual contests in the country. With elimination rounds spanning linear algebra, probability, and rare logic puzzles, only a handful of students make it to the final stage. And yet Charlotte, under the pseudonym Amamira, not only passed each round convincingly, but also scored a perfect mark in the expert-level logic section, leaving the judging panel astounded. One of the judges, a renowned mathematics PhD from Oxford University, exclaimed after reviewing the results, "We've just graded the work of a genius, a true prodigy, 1 in 10 million." When Charlotte's true identity was quietly verified by her school and revealed internally to the organizing committee, the judges were stunned. The Oxford academic, in a private exchange, emphasized that Charlotte achieved her victory not through royal privilege, but through sheer merit. He said, "Had she entered as a princess, we might have questioned the fairness. But the way she chose to hide her identity, letting her raw knowledge and logical thinking speak for themselves, that made her achievement undeniable." The story of Amamira C. Wales soon began to circulate among London's elite schools after the news leaked. While the organizers kept the information confidential from the public, within academic circles, whispers of the young math prodigy's true identity began to grow. And that explained what had seemed unthinkable to many, why Charlotte, when excluded from the formal reception, a blatant insult from Queen Camilla, could still smile with such serenity, because she knew her true worth did not lie in any gown, nor in anyone's permission to attend. Charlotte knew that only days prior she had outperformed thousands of students across the nation using nothing but her intellect, and no one had known who she was. That truth rendered Miss Reynolds' actions, believed to have played a role in Charlotte being removed from the guest list, even more absurd. A woman bearing the title of educational advisor, yet incapable of recognizing true brilliance in a crowd. An act of exclusion based on prejudice, status, and personal bias became a stinging contradiction to the very values the royal family claims to uphold: fairness, talent, and merit. So the larger question is, was Charlotte's decision to conceal her name in the competition her way of affirming her identity, not as a princess, but as a child yearning to be seen for who she truly is? Could it be that even at such a young age, she understood that the world is reluctant to accept royalty unless they prove their worth? And might this have been her silent protest against the very biases imposed on her from within the palace walls? Only now are people beginning to realize that they may have underestimated a girl barely 9 years old. Charlotte is not just the little princess standing beside her mother in a perfect family portraits. She is quietly proving that the blood of Diana still runs strong in her veins. Intelligence, composure, and a defiant will. These qualities are rising silently within her, like a seedling breaking through the hardened soil of aristocracy. And then, just as the auditorium held its breath, torn between outrage and uncertainty, the door behind the stage suddenly opened. A man with salt and pepper hair, clad in a classic black suit, stepped forward with an icy seriousness. None other than Dr. Raymond Ellis, the current director of the National Academic Alliance. His unexpected arrival was like an electric jolt through the tightly strung tension of the hall. Each of his footsteps echoed with authority, like a final verdict resounding in the silence. All eyes turned to the seasoned academic, known throughout the education world as the guardian of fairness. He needed no introduction. His reputation and authority alone commanded the room, compelling every educator in the hall to stand still and hold their breath. Stopping at the center of the stage, Dr. Ellis looked straight toward young Charlotte, who stood silently beside her parents. After a few seconds of silence that felt like a century, he reached for the microphone. His voice rang out, clear and powerful. "I must intervene right here and now. As director of the National Academic Alliance, I have reviewed the complete records, scores, and evaluation process of this year's competition. And I must reaffirm before the entire public that the most deserving winner, the true top performer of the examination, is Charlotte Spencer. The entire hall fell silent. A wave of murmurs rippled through the rows of seats. A few whispers slipped out, unable to be contained. Ms. Reynolds, still standing in the corner of the stage, turned completely pale, her lips pressed tightly together, but her trembling hands betrayed her. That was the moment her perfectly worn mask of morality shattered without mercy. Dr. Ellis didn't stop there. From his leather briefcase, he pulled out a certificate printed on metallic paper, framed in gold trim, bearing the official embossed seal of the Alliance. He stepped forward towards Charlotte and solemnly handed her the certificate. Every move was recorded on camera, every detail undeniable. On the certificate, the words were clear. Charlotte Spencer, National First Prize, Academic Year 2024 to 2025. Recognized by the panel of judges and the director of the Academic Alliance. He looked at Charlotte, then turned to face the hundreds of eyes locked onto him. He spoke with steel in his voice. No one, neither teacher nor judge, has the right to take away a student's excellence. Talent is a truth that cannot be hidden, and today, we must learn to bow before that truth. The moment his words ended, the auditorium erupted. A thunderous applause broke out and wouldn't stop. Cheers, sobs, and clapping merged into a symphony of justice. Charlotte's father held her tightly in his arms, while her mother's tears streamed down in unconcealed pride. In stark contrast to the swelling joy, Ms. Reynolds stood frozen on stage like a statue. She tried to maintain a composed face, but the blankness in her eyes and the confused expression on her face gave her away. Criticism began to rise from the parents section. Those who once admired her now felt betrayed by the very person they had trusted. Several fellow teachers stood up, some shaking their heads, others turning away in silent judgment. Ms. Reynolds' isolation had begun, right on the very stage she once dominated. Dr. Ellis still stood there like an immovable pillar amid the whirlwind of emotion. He knew the weight of what he had just done, but he also knew that without speaking up, the truth would forever remain buried beneath the dust of reputation and power. That moment sparked something far beyond the restoration of a title. It was a declaration that justice is not just a vague concept, but something that must be enforced through concrete action. His public presence and intervention turned the incident into a national lesson on professional ethics, on the responsibility of adults toward gifted youth, and on the urgent need for independent oversight in every academic competition. No one could deny the profound impact of that moment. It wasn't just about returning a title to its rightful owner. It was about reviving justice in the real world, in a world where many once believed that talent could never triumph over status and connections. Yet a lingering question remained unanswered. Would Dr. Ellis's bold action be enough to completely erase the damage Ms. Reynolds had inflicted on Charlotte? Could a certificate, however official and prestigious, truly heal the emotional wounds of a child, wounds born from doubt, sadness, and the cold stares she had endured during the day she was rejected? Justice had been restored, but dignity and trust, the two most fragile things in a child's heart, can they be mended with a few words of apology? Or would Charlotte forever carry with her that bitter memory, like a silent scar reminding her of the darker side of the adult world? And more importantly, after everything, who will be held truly accountable? Who will stand before the public and answer for a system that once enabled such injustice? These questions still await clarity. And as the eyes of the entire hall remained fixed on the torn certificate, Charlotte quietly bent down, gently picking up the scattered fragments from the floor. Not a word of complaint, not a single glance of resentment, only an eerie calm in her every movement. Her white uniform dress swayed softly with each motion, and in that moment the space around her seemed completely silent. The whole world appeared to pause, just to witness an act that seemed small, yet carried a powerful message. Calmness in the face of injustice is the highest form of dignity. Charlotte didn't need to argue, didn't need to justify herself or seek comfort from anyone. She simply stepped forward, silently raising the newly reprinted certificate handed to her in haste by the organizers, an ending gesture both gentle and resolute. The way she held that paper aloft, plain, without a golden frame or royal signature, carried with it an inexplicable strength. She didn't utter a word, yet every gaze, every movement was like a slap to the arrogance and calculation that had stripped her of the recognition she had rightfully earned. And in that silence, people realized Charlotte's calmness was the loudest voice in the room. The headmaster, the judges, even the parents who once whispered comparisons about her being less deserving than other children, fell into sudden silence. Their former pride and certainty crumbled into awkward unease. And within that strange quiet, every student in the auditorium, young children and hardened teens alike, felt something incredibly real, something that transcended status, even royalty, resilience and self-respect that needed no shouting or tears to be seen. Many adults in that hall bowed their heads, not from fear but from shame. They had just witnessed a princess publicly humiliated, not for wrongdoing, but out of envy. And when that little girl chose not to retaliate, but instead rose as a silent victor, they finally understood. Nobility doesn't lie in a crown or a title. It lies in how one upholds their dignity when it is spat on and discarded. The ripple effect of her actions spread like a quiet yet powerful wave. After the ceremony, social media exploded with an image of Charlotte holding up the simple certificate, accompanied by the hashtag #strength in silence. Across the United Kingdom, students began sharing their own stories of being overlooked, rejected, or pushed aside simply because they weren't among the chosen ones. And they spoke of Charlotte as a symbol, a representative of those who endure and rise without needing to scream for acknowledgement. Parents, too, began to question how they measured their children's success. Had we become so infatuated with glittering accolades that we forgot the most important lesson a child must learn is how to rise after being hurt? That true confidence doesn't come from public praise, but from the ability to hold on to your worth when no one else sees it. Charlotte's story became a mirror, not only reflecting the injustices of adults, but also shedding light on the self-worth many had lost amid the endless chase for achievements and comparisons. Numerous educators and psychologists also spoke out, describing Charlotte's gesture as the most profound unspoken lesson a child has ever taught an adult. In a world obsessed with showmanship, applause, and noise, her composure, subtlety, and strength stood out as a lesson everyone should remember. Charlotte didn't cry. She didn't complain. She simply walked forward, raised what others tried to snatch from her. Not to demand fairness, but to affirm this. Truth needs no loud defense. It has its own life, and dignity can never be taken away. This story, in the strangest way, did more than stir emotions. It awakened people. In an age where everyone rushes to speak, to prove themselves, Charlotte, a girl not even 10 years old, showed another way to live quietly but not submissively, to be hurt, but not defined by the pain, to be underestimated but never to look down on others in return. What made Charlotte's silence more powerful than any spoken word? Perhaps it was because it didn't stem from weakness, but from choice. She could have cried, she could have screamed, she could have walked away, but Charlotte chose to stay, to raise that paper, and to become a lighthouse in the storm of prejudice and ambition. That choice created a symbol, and that very choice made an entire nation, and many beyond its borders, re-examine themselves. Because in the end, perhaps we've all been Charlotte once. We've all been underestimated. We've all been pushed aside. But what sets us apart is how we choose to rise. And if a young girl could do it under the harsh glare of hundreds of judging eyes, then surely we can do it too in the noise of our own lives. Charlotte didn't speak, but perhaps she said more than anyone ever could. As the iron gates of Hill House School closed behind a semester filled with upheaval, whispers still buzzed from staff rooms to student halls. But one fact was undeniable. Charlotte did not fall. That small, unassuming figure carried within her an unshakable strength, transforming a public humiliation into a moment of quiet pride and resilience. The torn certificate was just a piece of paper. Charlotte's honor and worth? Untouchable. Dr. Ellis's timely intervention, a headmaster with vision and a heart for justice, did more than restore fairness to Charlotte. It rang a loud alarm throughout the entire educational system. With a public apology, a formal recognition ceremony, and the silent resignation of Ms. Reynolds, order was restored. But the most remarkable part? Charlotte didn't need to shout. She didn't need to rebel. She chose stillness, calm, and let truth speak for itself. Through action, through presence, through undeniable grace. The story at Hill House School is not just an internal school matter. It's a microcosm of society, a place where injustice still lingers, where young voices are often silenced, and where truth is sometimes bent by power. Yet right there we witness the brilliance of resilience. And resilience doesn't always roar, doesn't always revolt. Sometimes it simply stands up, holds its head high, and refuses to be defined by others. Charlotte's victory wasn't just about being vindicated. She won because she stayed true to herself. In the eyes of her classmates, her teachers, and even those who once doubted her, Charlotte is no longer the spoiled princess, as Ms. Reynolds once sneered. She is now a symbol for a generation that dares to rise above injustice with intelligence, integrity, and quiet courage. A flame that glows steadily and burns brighter when challenged by the wind. The greatest message this story offers is simple. Kindness and dignity have never been weaknesses. In a world that grows ever noisier and more chaotic, Charlotte's calmness is a reminder that we don't have to shout to be heard. We just need to live truthfully, stand bravely when it matters, and let time reveal who was right. Especially for the youth, this story stands as living proof that strength doesn't lie in the fame or titles, but in the courage to uphold your self-worth amidst the storm. And finally, the tale of Hill House School rekindles a vital hope that there are still people like Dr. Ellis, brave enough to acknowledge mistakes and make amends. That there are still students like Charlotte, brilliant, resilient, and kind-hearted. These seeds, if nurtured right, will bloom into a generation that says no to injustice, that protects truth, and that loves themselves and others in equal measure. What do you think about Charlotte's silent strength? What moment in her story moved you most? Leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you believe the world needs more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help spread this message of hope and courage to more people. Because sometimes one story, one action, one little girl can change the way an entire community understands courage and dignity.